Hello, brilliant minds and business trailblazers. Whether you're watching this on video or tuning in via podcast, we're thrilled to have you here at XRaised, where knowledge meets inspiration in the intricate dance of industry evolution. Now, today's conversation, it's a big one that sits at the intersection of technology, law, and our future as a society. We all love AI when it helps us draft contracts at lightning speed or maybe makes legal research a breeze. But where do we draw the ethical line? How do we ensure that AI in the legal space is a tool for justice rather than a potential liability? And to tackle this complex, crucial, and highly relevant topic, we have an absolute powerhouse in the legal field joining us today. We've invited back an award winning barrister, a fearless advocate in high stakes litigation, and a strategic mind in commercial, construction, and insurance law. She has shaped legal discourse through extensive publications, contributed to legal education at some of Australia's top universities, and just to keep things interesting, she co founded a company that's revolutionizing legal research with AI. Named as 2021 Lawyer Weekly Female Barrister of the Year, our guest was recently the top 100 women in construction in 2023. So, without further delay, back to our show is the co founder and chief executive officer of MiAI Law, Laina Chen. Welcome back,
Hi, Miles.
Laina.
Hi, Miles. Good to see you again.
Hello. First off, let's acknowledge the fact that you're basically redefining how lawyers interact with technology. I mean, with all the podcasts we've recorded, you're really amazing. But before we dive into the nuts and bolts of AI and law, I have to ask, how does one go from barrister to being a tech innovator?
Well, it started because I explained it in detail last episode, but so I won't go into detail. But basically, it was to solve a personal pain point that I had as a barrister
Mm,
that then became way bigger than just solving a problem for myself, because then I could see the opportunity it presented to really disrupt the world of law and to provide clients with huge benefits. The productivity gains that lawyers would get from that would eventually flow on to clients. And I was just really excited by the possibility, because what we're trying to solve now, which is to provide deep legal research over a curated list of primary source databases, that's his cases and legislation, is a problem that has not been solved by anyone, not by LexisNexis, not by Thomson. And we want to be, we
yeah.
hope in 12 weeks, we will be that company
Ah,
that is the first to solve this problem.
yes, which is quite the leap, Lena. And in a field like law, where ethical judgment is critical, what are the key risks we should be aware of when integrating AI into practice?
I think the most important thing is to realize that not all legal AI companies are the same. Everyone's promising a lot of things, but you have to check, you have to test the products, because they're not, the ones that I have tested have not delivered. And there's high error rates, there's hallucination, there's insufficient referencing to first principles, etc. And so it's questionable how much time they're really saving the lawyer, because you have to go and do all the research yourself to make sure that you're finding the most important case on point, not just the latest case.
Uh-huh.
And so when I was at Harvard just a month ago, I think the statistics that were being banded about were that if you find the right AI tool, they're not talking about law, but if you find the right AI tool to help you, it'll increase your productivity by 40%. But if you pick the wrong one, it will set you back by 20%.
Mm.
So you just have to be really careful what you're picking, and to make sure that the output is something that will actually help you increase productivity
And it's credible. Yeah.
and is credible.
hmm Of course, AI is only as good as the data it learns from. And when it comes to legal precedents, that's an area where mistakes aren't just expensive, they can have serious real world consequences, especially in the field of law. And speaking of which, Lena, we've seen cases where AI systems reflect human biases. The legal system is actually already under scrutiny for bias in various rulings. So, how does the legal industry ensure fairness in AI generated research?
I don't think that you can eliminate human bias, because all the judgments are produced by humans, by judges, and they have inherent biases. And so the judgments that we read are inevitably infected by the biases that are present in each of the judges. There's no consistent, there's no one way, there's not necessarily one correct answer, because each person will view evidence in their own particular way and draw inferences, and from their own personal experience will affect the way they see certain evidence. And so what we're doing in our database is that every time we are chunking our cases, we take note of who are the particular judges, and we track how that judge reacts to particular evidence, particular causes of action, so that when you use our system, you'll be able to know your judge.
Yeah.
So yes, because I don't think you can eliminate biases because of the nature of human beings. But what we can do is we can track it. And so we can track how certain judges behave. And then, over a certain period of time, I think you'll be able to see the pattern of how it is certain judges react to certain types of cases. And for example, I was listening to the chief judge in equity speak just a few days ago. And he was saying that, some judges like to impose a cost cap when in succession matters, when the size of the estate is very small, so that lawyers can't then, take too much a share of the estate for their legal costs. But it seems only a couple of the judges do that. Not every single judge does that. So, and he emphasized the importance of consistency, because the way a party is treated shouldn't be dependent upon how a particular judge reacts. And so he was talking about, possibly issuing a practice note to try and standardize this practice. But that's just the nature of human beings.
Right. And that's a great point, Laina. So the AI learns from the judges and the judgments.
Yeah, and the judgments are inherently have baked into them human biases.
Yes. And transparency and auditability in the AI decision making could be a game changer for the legal industry. But let's take this a step further, Laina. Right now, AI is a research assistant, but do you think it will ever play a role in actual judicial decision making, or should it remain just a tool for legal professionals?
Well, definitely for the moment, I think it can help judges. It can help judges process all the data, help them with their research. I can see a future where all the parties have access to MiAI Law, for example. The court books are all uploaded into a system where the judges and the parties can all access the same system. And then, the parties can have access to additional bits. They can do their work on MiAI, they can do their research, they can have their notes, they can have everything hyperlinked. Obviously, the judge wouldn't have access to that, but then the judge would have access to all the publicly available materials, the affidavits, the pleadings, etc. And then they should be able to use MiAI Law to interrogate that data and also be able to carry out research and then test the parties' submissions and their legal submissions, so that everyone's using the one system, but each party will have access to different bits depending on whether, whether they're acting for the plaintiff, whether they're acting for the defendant, whether they're the judge. And so in that way, we should be able to really decrease the burden on everyone in the decision-making loop.
Yes. So AI is a great tool in processing, but not yet in the near future in being actually the judges.
Yeah. It should help them. I mean, it's a big grind for them, especially, for example, if you have a multi-party case and you've got heaps of parties that are in court. Each party is represented by so many people, and then there's the one poor judge sitting at the apex who has to troll through all of the data, all of the case law to decide the outcome of the case.
Right. And you're right. Legal reasoning isn't just about pattern recognition. It's about weighing human factors, context, and intent. And still, with AI evolving so fast, it seems also inevitable that regulations will need to catch up. So, in your opinion, how do legal regulations need to adapt to ensure AI is used responsibly in practice?
Well, AI, you can just view AI like your junior lawyer or your paralegal. When
Uh-huh.
your paralegal gives you work, you have to test, you have to check their work. You can't just use their work blindly without checking it. And so the courts have been dealing with it by issuing practice notes to guide the practitioners on how to use AI responsibly. But it's really common sense. So, for example, the Supreme Court of New South Wales has a practice note that says that if counsel, like me, use AI in their submissions, we have to note that we have used AI in our submissions, and that we have checked it. But that's just common sense. So I don't understand why some practitioners have thought that just because they were using AI, ChatGPT or whatever it is they were using, that they didn't need to check the output to make sure that everything was correct.
Mm-hmm.
I think it really does come down to common sense. Treat AI like you would treat your paralegal. Would you
Mm-hmm.
just blindly use the output of your paralegal without checking?
Yes, makes perfect sense.
It makes perfect sense, but it doesn't seem to be obvious to everyone, and it's led to the necessity of the courts handing down these practice notes. I mean, and some problems are that experts, for example, I've been told that they have been using AI to generate their reports. They don't even check it.
Mm-hmm. Regulation shouldn't stifle innovation. You're right. It should ensure that innovation doesn't create more legal gray areas than it solves. And that
Shouldn't be
brings
a You shouldn't be afraid of AI. AI is here
Mhm.
to stay.
Yes,
And when I was at Harvard Business School, it was completely embraced. I mean, the business school has its own enterprise ChatGPT. It's
yes.
got its own, and it's fully embraced. And it's crazy to be scared of it, to not embrace the future when AI is the future. But it's, as you say, it's about the responsible use of AI, and it's about making sure you've selected the right tools and that
Mm,
you've done your due diligence to make sure that the tools that you're selecting have, as you say, not garbage in for input, because that
mhm.
will lead to garbage for output. And that
Yeah.
you just have to be careful, because there's so hundreds of vendors out there right now saying that they've got agents that can help you. But what are they?
Yeah. What are their bases? I
Yeah,
mean,
what are
where
their
does the
bases,
data
and
come
how do we
from?
know how accurate they
Oh,
are? And
yeah.
just don't trust every vendor out there. You just have to check their provenance.
Hmm. As I always would tell my son, there are more fake ones than real ones.
Mhm.
Right? And that brings me to the next generation of legal professionals, Lena. Do you think law schools should start incorporating AI powered legal research as a core skill? Are we at the point where AI literacy is just as important as knowing case law?
Well, absolutely. I think they should be taught how to use AI responsibly, and that they should be taught how to research using AI, and then they should be taught how to leverage the results that they get from AI to help them answer their legal research
Mhm.
problems, whatever you get taught at law school. You shouldn't be shying away from it, and that law school should be working out a way on how to upskill lawyers so
Mhm.
that when they graduate and they get jobs in law firms, they can hit the road running.
Mhm. Right. You know, I expected that response from you because why not? Especially if it's well regulated and ethically applied. I mean, if calculators are allowed in math exam, for example, why not AI in legal research?
And
It's
why not?
quite an evolution, I must say.
I mean, we just have to be careful that, in MiAI Law, we're not using any of your data to train
Mhm.
our overall model.
Yes.
Everyone's data is segregated and siloed to the particular client. There's no sharing between users. We're not,
Mhm.
using your information
For
from one
another
client to
one.
answer the problems of another client.
Mhm.
Everything is siloed, kept separate. We're complying with the obligations under the privacy law. We're not selling your data. We're not, we're collecting your personal data, but for only for the purposes of being able to provide you with the service. We're not aggregating your personal data or selling it. We're not doing any of that. But we just have to be careful that, I think most importantly, that the primary sources that we are relying upon, because there are two aspects to data. There's the language model that has been trained on the World Wide Web, But then in our model, we are then using the language model, which we have fine-tuned, post-trained, fine-tuned, etc., to deal with law, to then search a curated database and a curated list of websites. So we're not then, when answering your questions, we're not sending our model out into the World Wide Web to look at
And I remember
everything on the website to answer your questions, because that would produce garbage result.
For sure. And I remember you have that military grade encryption, Laina, right?
Well, it's two-factor authentication, yes.
Yes. And I love that teaching AI as a tool rather than a crutch. And it's about enhancing human expertise, not actually replacing it. And before we wrap up, let's remind our audience, Laina, how they can find you and learn more about MiAI Law and what's next.
Well, you should definitely follow MiAI Law on LinkedIn. We are miai.law. And also our website's the same name, miai.law. And you should go there and register your interest, because we've just signed the agreement with the production team, and the timeline for a soft launch is 12 to 14 weeks. So
Very soon.
Releasing our Australian legal research product first, and then, which has two aspects. We're going to allow users to prepare a certain number of research reports. Currently, the website says 20, but I don't know if we can afford 20. And also there will be needle in the haystack searches, which I am going to include as part of the package, because, for lawyers, we just want to know that one case on point or two cases on point where a similar problem had occurred in the past, and to be able to find that case quickly for the users. So I have to amend my website to say that we are also going to be offering that feature as part of our initial launch, which I like to call is the equivalent of launching iPhone 1, because we're doing something that nobody else has done before. But I need to get iPhone 1 out to meet all this demand that's been coming to me. And then we can go from there as we are continuing to work in the background on iPhone 2, iPhone 3, etc. There's just so much we need to do, but then at the same time, there's so much demand that I just want to get a product out that I know will help barristers and other lawyers, even as we're working on, more features and more complexity in the background.
Yes, the soonest time as possible. That will be in August, right? Between July and August.
Yes.
Yes.
Or you can send us an email at interest@miai.law, miai.law, to register your interest, or you can register your interest on the website.
Yes, perfect. Well, Laina, as always, you make our conversation eye-opening. You're truly leading the charge in responsible AI innovation. And I think our audience, whether they're lawyers, business leaders, or just curious about AI, has walked away with so much clearer picture of where AI fits into the legal landscape. So thank you so much for sharing your time, insights, and expertise with us once again.
Thanks, Miles.
Always a pleasure to have you. So
have a good weekend, Miles.
You too. Busy week for you though, but I hope it's a productive one. So thank you again, Laina.
Thank you.
So for those tuning in who are in the legal space and want to make AI work for you without the ethical nightmares, you know where to go. Thank you everyone for joining us today. Don't forget to share and subscribe so you don't miss our next deep dive into the world of business, innovation, and law with Laina. Catch us again soon. This has been your host, Miles. Stay focused and inspired with XRaised.